Hey everybody, just gonna give everybody a few minutes to get into the stream here, and yeah, just giving everybody a couple minutes here. You can see behind me, got a new toy, so we're gonna open it up. It's sort of a reboxing, but we'll get into that re-unboxing, but we'll get into that. It's a first unboxing for me. I do have the chat up, so I can see what you guys have to say. If you have questions, lots of echo. Alright, hang on a second.
Let's see.
Trying a new setup here with the stream, so. How's that? Do we still have echo? Hey Vince. Hey Rob.
Two mics. Hang on. Let's try. How about now?
How's that sounding?
Still there. What is it doing? Snowball.
How about now?
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Now my video's frozen. Okay, I got a. Sounded good. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. What is up with that? Alright, well.
How about now?
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Speakers aren't on. No echo.
Let's try.
How about now? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing for echo.
Gotta love live streams.
Rob says it's worse again. How about now? Is it sounding any better? Okay, how about now? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Let me pull up the stream and see what it sounds like on my phone. Sounds worse. Ooh, that's a like it's toy. Okay, how about now? Whoa. Alright, hang on, I'm gonna unplug and replug.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Sounds good now, Rob? Okay. So it looks like it's sounding better now. It must have been something with the USB input on the mic. Okay. So looks like we got a couple people in here now. How's video? It looks like it's frozen on my end. Is it actually frozen for you guys? Oh, come on. Why is my video frozen? Sorry guys, just bear with me here for a second. Gotta work out the bugs. There we go. Now we should be back. We could do an audio only unboxing. That would be really productive. Okay, so yeah, because Windows. We'll blame it on Windows. Alright, so let's do a last testing on the audio. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Echo again. What is up with that? Alright. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's an idea. I didn't even think to do this. No. Okay. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Should be only one audio source. Yeah, I just disabled the camera mic. Yeah, that's definitely bad. Disabled. One. Okay, let me try something here once. How about now? Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, what's up with this? Sorry guys. Bear with me here a minute longer. Okay, let's try this. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's try this. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. just have to do away with the Blue Snowball for now. Just use the built-in mic. So it may not be the best of quality audio for you. I apologize, but I don't want to keep you waiting. So now my phone's talking. Okay. So as you guys saw from the title, tonight I sort of had to make an unexpected trip down to Delaware, which is about an hour and a half from me. Last night, I was getting ready to run some final prints for a craft show that my wife and I are doing tomorrow. It's our first craft show, so we're nervous. We feel totally unprepared, but we're going to see how it goes. Last night, I was running off some more prints on the Flash Forge and on the Wanhao, and I ended up getting a temperature loss on the bed. So popped the bed off, flipped it over, and I found a broken wire, fixed it, put it back together, and next thing you know, my Z-axis for some reason just stopped working. Tested things out as far as swapping the dual Z-axis on the Wanhao i3 Plus with I took the Z's and put them on the X and Y. The Z steppers work fine, but apparently the driver on the Melzi, I think it's a 5.1 motherboard, took a crap on me. So I needed to do something, and tonight we ended up, as soon as I got home from work, we jumped in the car, my wife and my daughters and I, and we ran down to Printed Solid down in Newark, Delaware. And fortunately, Matt and Dave from Printed Solid stuck around for me. They typically leave about 5:30, 6 o'clock, especially today. They've been working their butt off all day long and dealing with all the Black Friday sales for 2017 over here in the States. And I believe their sales were good internationally as well. So for those of you guys that are outside of the country, you could get some pretty decent deals. You do have about 15 more minutes to get the Black Friday sales on their website. That will end at midnight. They have some pretty decent sales on the LulzBot printers, the hardware for the LulzBots, tons of filament. This morning at midnight, 12:01, I was on Printed Solid's website and ordered 2 rolls of filament. I got the Polymaker PC Plus at I believe it's a 50% discount. Don't hold me to that. It's either 45 or 50% discount. And what else did I get? I got a Polyalchemy Elixir, one of their ones that's been sitting on the shelf. And talking to Matt tonight, it sounds like I guess Polymaker or Polyalchemy won't actually be selling that aqua blue Polyalchemy Elixir. So I picked up a spool of that, and for that I paid, for the 2 of them, I ended up paying like $38. So about the price of 1 spool. So if you are still looking, if you got some money to spend yet for Black Friday, take a look at what Printed Solid's got if you haven't so far. I'm going to start out the video telling you guys I'm not affiliated with Printed Solid. I am friends with Matt just through meeting him through the 3D printing community and Make 717. Make 717 in Lancaster, PA. That's where I got to meet Matt for the first time, and since then he helped me get into 3D printing. And just to give a credit to Matt's personality and the type of person he is, when I got into 3D printing, I couldn't afford any of the printers that he was selling. Matt went above and beyond by recommending the first printer to me, and it was one that he didn't sell. I didn't buy it from him, but he recommended the Delta. I was hard set at the time on getting a Delta. Dave says, blame Matt for everything. I was hard set on getting a Delta printer for my first printer, and a kit at that. Matt had suggested the Foldertech console kit at the time, and I couldn't be happier. Now, I know some people have a love-hate relationship as far as Foldertech go, but, you know, if Matt's going to go and recommend a printer that he's not even going to make a commission on, that tells you something. He's definitely in it for the community, and he'll help you in any way that he can, making recommendations, even if it's not something he sells. So with the Wanhao dying on me last night, it kind of left me in a position. I wanted to take the 3D printers along to the craft show, and I needed to do something. I wanted to take my Flash Forge, and I wanted to take something that's good and reliable. I've had my eyes set on a CR-10 ever since back at the beginning when Uncle Jesse started reviewing it and talking about it, and Preston over at Press Reset, he started talking about it. Um, definitely, definitely was an eye opener to me. I've been doing things like printing. I have this self-imposed goal that I want to print every helmet and every droid head from the Star Wars movies at full scale. The helmets wearable, the droid heads, if possible, maybe wearable, but like R2-D2 and stuff, I want to print it the full size of R2-D2, not a scaled down model. So the ones that I've done so far, I've printed in pieces. And seeing the CR-10, I mean, it's been out now, since back in the spring, I believe. You see good reviews, bad reviews. If you follow the 3D printing group on Facebook, you'll see a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses from ordering overseas from China, from GearBest and AliExpress, I believe, or I forget what the other popular Chinese one is off the top of my head. You take a risk by ordering it from them. One, you have to wait 4 to 6 weeks sometimes to get it if they don't have it in their U.S. warehouses. So you already have that long of a wait. I mean, the printer is the CR-10, the typical CR-10, the first one, runs anywhere between $299 up to about $460, $480 US dollars. CR-10S starts out around $470, I believe, on those sites and can go up from there. But you take the same risk. I mean, that's not a lot of money when it comes to 3D printing, what you could spend on a printer, but you take a huge risk by buying it that, the printer's coming from China. It's got to come over on a boat. It's got to be handled by our lovely UPS, FedEx, and U.S. Postal Service. And for any of us in the U.S., we all know what kind of care sometimes they can take on our packages. And when you're talking about a machine that you expect to have some specific precision, you want it taken care of. So you'll see people saying about, my bed's not level, it's warped, frames aren't straight, things are twisted, things are loose, all kinds of stuff. Some of that can happen in shipping. Some of it could just be quality assurance from Creality. And I don't mean to say anything bad about Creality by any means. This is going to be my first experience with a Creality printer and Creality as a company. So I really don't mean to say anything bad about them. For all I know, they ship a printer out the door and it's phenomenal, and it just gets screwed up in shipping. But you take that risk. So there's companies like Tiny Machines, I believe it is, and here as of, I believe, the end of September, beginning of October, Printed Solid now joined on board as being having a certification program, so to speak. Dave's in the chat here, so Dave, if I do get anything wrong, please correct me if I do get it wrong. But basically what happens is Matt and Dave order in a skid of CR-10S model printers. The CR-10S, the difference for anybody who's not aware from the CR-10 to the CR-10S, CR-10 came with single lead screw, I believe a single Y, the aluminum that the Y carriage runs on back and forth, I believe it was a single beam. The CR-10S comes with the dual lead screws. It comes with, I'm pretty sure we'll find out here, but it comes with 2 beams that the Y-axis can run back and forth on. There's a loss of filament detection. I'm not sure, I don't remember, and Dave, you can probably answer this, if the CR-10S has power loss recovery like some of the printers are coming with now. I'm interested to see if this has that. It's not something I've actually gotten to experience, but my longest print to date has been a 24-hour print. This printer can lead to the possibilities of 100-hour prints and up. If you've ever seen anything that Uncle Jesse does, or I believe it's Neary on YouTube, he's doing a big print pretty much every day. He's got a few of the CR-10s and a few other large format printers. Joel, the 3D printing nerd, you see him doing G-Max size prints. Those prints all take some time. Dave did say the CR-10S does not have power loss, and the next version of the CR-10S is going to have the power loss feature on it. So that is one thing. It doesn't have it, but it's kind of, with these bigger printers, it's getting to be a more important thing. Now, because this doesn't have it, what you guys can't see is down underneath the table over here, I do have an UPS battery backup that will be able to run this printer for approximately 6 hours with the bed at 100 degrees Celsius, and which I know this may struggle to get to 100 degrees, but I wanted to make sure I had some room. But I'll be able to run this thing for approximately 6 hours without power. So I have my own power loss protection. If you are interested in power loss and you don't want to buy an UPS, UPS backup, keep that in mind. Dave said the next iteration is going to have power loss features to it, power loss recovery. So something to keep in mind if you are looking for it. I'm not sure if Printed Solid's going to carry the new one, or if they're going to stick with just the CR-10S that I have here in the box. Just looking here to see what Dave said. So the CR-10S is still a single beam on the Y, so I was incorrect on that. Thanks for correcting me there, Dave. It is all metal parts as opposed to 3D printed parts. The CR-10S does not have power loss. The next one shipping does, as I just said. The 10S also has the ramps compatible board compared to the CR-10. That's actually a really good point. So I purchased a FlashForge. It's actually a PowerSpec Ultra from Micro Center, but it's the FlashForge Dreamer hardware inside of the FlashForge Creator shell. The one downside of that printer is I like to run Octoprint, or I've been playing with AstroPrint and looking at the 3D printer OS to monitor my printers remotely and be able to get notifications when a print completes. The CR-10S will be easily compatible with Octoprint in order for me to set that stuff up. So that's a really important note about the ramps compatible board. Sorry, I got a bunch of notifications popping up here. Let me fix that. Okay, the CR-10S does have the filament runout sensor, and he did say that the new CR-10S is on its way to Printed Solid, so they are going to be carrying it. I'm not sure if there's going to be a price difference on that or not. Dave, if you have that information and want to share it, go ahead and post it in the chat. If not, that's fine. That's up to you guys. So I started out by saying I'm not affiliated with Printed Solid. Matt and Dave did me a huge favor tonight and stuck around. Took me an hour and a half to get down to Delaware from where I live, and they stuck around for me after they had originally planned on going home. Again, they've had a busy day with the Black Friday sales and shipping out orders. I know my order from midnight shipped really early this morning. I mean, those guys were on it. So they were kind enough to stick around for me and send me home with a brand new CR-10S. Now, I said at the beginning, and some of you guys may not have caught it, this is going to be a re-unboxing, technically. The reason I say that is because every single one that Matt and Dave get in at Printed Solid, they take it out of the box, they fully assemble the printer, they tighten up the belts, they tighten up all the screws that you normally don't have to deal with when you assemble this printer. They go through and tighten everything down for you. They make sure that your bed isn't warped. Dave has even gone to the extent of writing or customizing the Marlin, I think it's 1.16 version of Marlin for the CR10. Dave was telling me tonight that the CR-10S actually comes with a really old version of Marlin. Why they would do that, I don't know, but it's probably just simpler for them to, they've already got it customized, so they just dump it on the board and off they go. But they take it all out of the box, they fully assemble your printer, and test it. They make sure everything's going to work. And the best part about it is, instead of having to deal with the Chinese distributors and dealing with a problem if one should arise, you get to deal with Printed Solid here in the States. They will take care of being the middleman between you and Creality, as opposed to you having to deal with GearBest or any of the other Chinese distributors who are just basically, I mean, not to say anything bad about them, but they're out to sell a product, and it's hard to communicate overseas, bottom line. So Dave, I know he did a live stream on Facebook back when they announced that they were carrying the CR-10S. He did basically a full run through of what they're doing when they review or when they certify your printer. So you can see in the title, I like to joke and call this the CR-10SPS for Printed Solid Edition. They do print, I wasn't sure if you guys were doing that or not, Dave. Dave just said in the chat, they do print a 3D Benchy on every printer. So your printer will, like when I start this up, it probably will have a little bit of filament in the hot end yet from them doing their test print. I'm assuming my Benchy probably is in the box that this printer specifically printed. So, I mean, they're doing the full deal. They're checking it all out for you. So, enough talking. Let's get this box opened up. And because mine was picked up locally and sort of at a last minute's notice, I just have 2 pieces of masking tape, so they made it easier for me to unbox this. I'm going to get my keyboard out of the way here. And Dave said that the new ones are on their way, the new CR-10S, and that they will be the same price as these CR-10Ss, which I believe they are on sale right now for Black Friday. They do. I'm not sure if it's just Black Friday or longer, but they do have a sale going on the CR-10S that you can jump in on in like 2 minutes if it's for Black Friday. Or you have 2 minutes to jump in it for Black Friday if that's what the sale's for. Now I do have this. This will not come with your printer unless you order it. Hold it over here so you can see it. This is the Capricorn tube, PTFE tube. Now, the reason for this is the cheaper PTFE tubes, they have the tolerances on the inside channel that your filament runs through aren't quite as tight. It's not as smooth. It's not, a lot of those are not true PTFE. They're sort of a mixture. They're not high quality, essentially. Capricorn tubes, you guys have probably been seeing people talking about these on Twitter and Facebook, in the 3D printing groups. Everybody that I've heard of so far that ordered these Capricorn tubes are extremely happy with them. I know Joe Mike's running one on his TiVo Tarantula, which that printer is known for out of the box having a lot of stringing. He's fixed some of his issues with hot end jams and stuff, trying to get his retraction settings right by switching to the Capricorn tube. Depending on how this works on here, I may be doing the same thing to my TiVo Tarantula as well to see if I can straighten that out. But this will not come with your printer unless you order it separately. They do sell them at Printed Solid. The link for the printer and the Capricorn tube is down in the description below. The Capricorn tubes aren't that expensive. So I'm going to sit that up here out of the way. Hopefully it doesn't fall down out of the way. Okay, so let's see what we got here. You guys can see that pretty well. Foam packing. Look at that. Right there's the printer. Part of the printer. And more importantly, so I was telling you about the checklist that Printed Solid does. Printed Solid CR-10S inspection checklist. Inventory. All parts and accessories are in the box. level and square base assembly. So they're actually going to check to make sure everything is squared up and true and tight. Level and square the Z assembly. So your vertical, the Z axis, as everything lifts up, they're checking that to make sure it's square and tight. Straight Z axis lead screws. That's another thing that I've heard people say about in the 3D printing groups, that they get a bent Z axis. If your Z axis is bent, you're never going to get a quality print off of that printer. And there's no good way to straighten bent threaded rod. Z couplers functional. Again, the couplers that are on the stepper motors, I've seen pictures, and I'm not saying whether these are all true or false, but I've seen pictures where the coupler, which is an aluminum, basically like a spring made out of aluminum or spring steel, I'm not sure which, that they've been stretched out. They're making sure that they're actually compressed like they're supposed to be and just have enough gap in them like they're supposed to. Here's an important one. For those of us in the United States, that the power is actually set to 110 volts and not 230 volts, I believe it is overseas, or in some countries. Check the build plate for flatness. Again, super important, especially with a build plate that's, what is it, 12 inches by 12 inches by 12 inches. Or, yeah, well, the build plate's 12 by 12, it's not 12 high. A level build plate, when you're printing on a build plate that big, that is a highly critical thing. You're not going to get a good bed adhesion or even a decent bottom layer on the your print if your bed's not level. Excuse me. They inspect the glass plate for defects. Again, it's a piece of glass. It just made it from China to the United States or wherever you are. It could be cracked. It could be chipped. It could be... you've heard people say that their glass bed was warped as well, that the glass was not actually flat. Check tensions on belts and concentric nuts. Confirm build plate gets to 80 degrees Celsius. Again, I said earlier, I didn't think this would be able to get up to 100 degrees Celsius, at least not in an enclosure. If you do have it in an enclosure, it might make it. If you have it in a heated enclosure, it most likely will make it at that point. Verify the bootloader. Make sure that you don't have corrupt software on the motherboard. Flash the current firmware. Again, that's something that these Chinese printers, they ship them out the door, and a lot of times they don't support them. Like I said, Dave has rewritten, or not rewritten, but customized the Marlin, I believe 1.16, and customized it for the CR-10. There's a couple new features in there, such as baby steps for the steppers, which is going to help with quality of your prints and accuracy as well. There is also bed mesh leveling enabled in that firmware. Now that firmware does not come on the CR-10 from Printed Solid, but over on their website, and I'll update the description below after the stream, on their website, Dave has an entire write-up on every single change that he made to Marlin, or features that he enabled, uncommented, or I don't know if there's anything on there that's actually something that he commented out, but he goes through step by step, or right at the very beginning, he says, you know, I'm going to cut to the chase, here's the file. And he does it as a hex file so that you can easily upload it to the printer using Cura or any of the slicers that have the ability to write firmware to RAMPS compatible board. So firmware-wise, this is still going to come with Creality's firmware, but it's going to be the latest Creality firmware at the time of shipment. Test filament sensor. Again, you've got a feature on this printer that's a lifesaver for the big prints where you're going to print more than one spool, or you're starting with a partial spool. If it runs out, this thing will stop, it'll pause, and it'll wait. Perform test print from the SD card. Again, there's another point that people have brought up in the past, what everybody calls the Decapicat. It's a little Chinese cat figurine, which is really funny because I found a Chinese restaurant locally to me that has a big ceramic or porcelain one. It was kind of neat to see that in a non-3D printing fashion and kind of get an idea where it came from. But the problem everybody's had with, not everybody, but some people have had is the image or the G code on the SD card was corrupt, and they'd get a cat that sometimes it would only print like mid-belly, other times it would print up to its shoulders and have no head. Hence where the Decapicat meme came from. Inspect the hot end for leaks. Nozzle's not tight. The heat break tubing isn't tight into the heater. You'll get filament oozing out of it. For anybody who's ever torn apart a hot end and upgraded to all metal or put in hardened nozzles or plated nozzles, probably at some point in time you've experienced some leakage from the nozzles. They're making sure that that doesn't happen for your printer out of the box. And last but not least, and actually probably the most important thing that they're doing at Printed Solid, is they're inspecting the wires and solder on the bed heater. It's a sore topic, but for those some of those printers that are coming out that are extremely low cost, the electrical's not done very well on them. At best, you end up with a wire coming loose from a board or a solder joint heating up and coming loose. At worst, there are some printers that unfortunately have had worse outcomes. So at the bottom of this, you got dated and signed by, I believe that might be Dave that inspected my printer. So whoever's checking it out from Printed Solid signs and dates it. This is something that you get. I do heating and air conditioning for my day job, and this is something that you get with extremely expensive equipment. The fact that you're getting it with a cheaper device is actually pretty cool. Give me 1 second here. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Again, streaming bugs. I forgot to plug the laptop in. So it was about to die on me. So, like I said, with extremely expensive equipment, I mean, you're talking equipment that's $4,000 or $5,000 or $30,000 or $100,000. You'll get on a lot of that a checklist just like this of who inspected it, when they inspected it, and then going down through and checking it off. Talking to Dave, talking to Matt, I fully trust when I look at this checklist and see that it's checked off that Dave didn't just sit there and go, I'm going to check it off and sign on it and ship this out. Because if there is a problem with something on this list, Matt and Dave are going to back it up. As long as it's not something you caused by dropping the box, because this is a pretty heavy printer. I was surprised when I picked up the box how heavy this thing is. If you do something user error and you damage your printer, I'm sure to an extent they will try to work with you, help you through bugs. But if it's truly, you've got the printer, get it out of the box, and the Z-axis doesn't want to go up, they're going to work with you. They're going to be your technical support for manufacturer issues and something that's on this list that doesn't work out of the box. So really important, really awesome of these guys to include this in their checklist. This proves a little bit more, gives a little bit more credibility to them actually doing what they say they do. And there's no questions what they did if you can look down the list and see it. So, back to the box. Most important part. Alright, looks like this top layer will come out. And this is going to be the Y carriage with the bed. And it is wrapped. Even though the guys opened it up at Printed Solid and inspected it, it is repackaged very close, if not exact, to how Creality will ship out the printer. So you got saran wrap holding everything back together to keep it stable. The Fed clips are already on the bed. There's a piece of, looks like masking tape on the bed already. And the glass is on the bed right off the bat. So let's get that saran wrap. Actually, tell you what, let's sit this off to the side for right now. I'm glad to see mine's the blue one and not the orange one. Alright, so next part of the box here, we've got the control unit for the printer. Not sure yet what's in this box, but we'll find out. Take that out here and set it off to the side. And you can see the vertical towers, the Z-axis of the printer and the X-axis. Packaged in here nicely, more foam on it. Take the control box out here. So you got your control box with all the wire leads on it. If I had to complain about one thing about the CR-10, again, obviously not actually having one before, but any 3D printer, I'm not crazy about the external control boxes, but for the price and the size of this, I can figure out later on down the road how to mount this more permanently to the printer to meet my preferences. I just don't like the idea of this being able to get knocked off of a desk or something like that. So probably one of the first things that I'll do to this printer as far as modification, besides putting Dave's firmware on it, is I'll most likely figure out a way to make the control box more permanently fixed to the printer. Alright, so we got all that stuff out. We got, here's the most important thing about this printer, and buying it from Printed Solid. There's some gummy bears. My wife wants those. Alright, so we got those out. There's a roll of tape in here. Now, personally, when I first started printing, I used the blue painter's tape a lot. I've since moved away. I print on glass with either glue stick or Magigoo. I really, honestly, I don't use much of anything else anymore. A lot of times with the glass beds, I actually find I don't need anything depending on what materials I'm printing. So we got tape. I actually set the tape up here out of the way. And of course, Printed Solid sticker. You guys probably can't see that. There's Printed Solid stickers. Now, Matt and Dave did go through this, or somebody from Printed Solid did go through this and inspect this printer. With that said, you don't want to just go yanking this out of the box. You want to be gentle with it, even though it is packed in foam and everything. It's still possible that if you go twisting and yanking on it, that you could knock something out of alignment right away. Things like the X-axis or the Z level from one side to the other, that's something that'll probably need to be tweaked right out of the box when you set it up. But again, that's because of shipment, because of you getting it out of the box, them putting it in the box. It can't stay perfectly level. This looks like it's actually strapped in there, so I'm going to pull the foam out. Get the box out of here. Let's see, how is this attached? Dave, I might need you to tell me how to unbox my own printer. There you go. This thing's actually in this foam really, really snugly. I mean, I'm actually kind of having to work at this to get this out of here. Alright. So there are the Z towers. Get the foam out of here. Alright, so as I said before, you've got the dual lead screws, your extruder. It is the CR-10S. All the CR-10 models are Bowden drive. I know there's modifications out there already to put the E3D hot ends on. I've seen some people do direct drive or direct extruders, modifications to the printer. There's all kinds of things with this printer. It's got a huge community around it. questions about how to use it, if something's not working right, there's probably somebody else out there that's experienced the same problem as you might experience. So you've got the extruder, and the Z steppers are zip tied in place. I'm assuming that is primarily for shipping. I did not see a set of directions yet as far as whether I'm to cut those off or not. So Dave, if you wouldn't mind posting in the chat, I'll just kind of let you guide me a little bit on that part of it. But I am going to open up that box and see if there's a set of instructions in the box as well. And then, of course, you've got your hot end mounted on the X-axis and your X extruder. And like Dave said, there's nothing on here that I'm seeing that are printed pieces. It's either injection molded or all metal. I believe the extruder, the Bowden extruder gears and everything, the plastic that's mounted on, that's plastic, but everything else there is either brass or hardened steel. It's all metal. So let's gently lay that down. See what's inside of this box. While I'm opening that, let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. If it works, it was. Dave said if it works, then it was inspected by him. If it doesn't, then it was inspected by Alex. Yeah, he said about the packaging, comment on that. Shipped from China, so it's got to ship packed tightly. I'm sure you can buy printers out there from China that are not packed nearly as well as what this was. I mean, like I said, I had to actually work to get that in there. Yeah, Chris, I got the blue one. I'm so happy I got the blue one and not the orange one. If it was the orange one, I probably would have removed the racing stripes from it. Zip ties are for shipping on the Z-axis extruders, the dual Z, so they will get cut away. All right, let's see what's inside of the box. Dave, while I'm opening this up, does it come with an assembly instruction guide? I'm assuming it does. Yes, Chris, we all know you like blue. Alright, US plug for the power cord. That's important if you're in the US. You don't want a European cord. Part of the filament spool holder bracket that'll go on the control box. Now, I have seen people putting the filament mount in different places rather than putting it on the control box. I know people were saying if you use one of like the economy spools like Printed Solid sells, the control box has a better tendency to want to tip over because of the weight throwing the center of gravity off. I've seen people putting it on top of the printers. This thing's already a pretty tall printer, so I probably won't do that. I'm going to mount it up here for the unboxing and the assembly, but I'll probably not use the spool holder on the control box because I have an overhead system mounted to the floor joist in my basement over top of where my printers sit. So I probably won't use this other than when we go to the craft shows and things like that. Yeah, and I kind of agree with Chris. With a printer this size, I know like the Wand House come with the spool holder on top, but just like Chris said in the chat, I don't necessarily recommend putting it on top. That's a lot of weight on top of this printer, and it can maybe introduce some vibrations and defects in your print. So what else do we have here in the box? We've got a bag full of hardware. There's wrenches, looks like possibly wrenches for the nozzle, and also the nuts that hold the frame together. There's Allen's, quite a few different Allen wrenches in here. A tiny straight screwdriver. They're always handy to have around your printers. One of the things that I've been thinking about doing is the printers that I get that come with tools for that printer. One of the first things I'm probably going to start doing is designing a holder that actually mounts to the printer or the control box or something. Somewhere that all these tools can be kept right there with that printer. Because if you saw my desk over here, it's a disaster. I have to hunt around for the tools that are laying on it from all the different printers. the 4 printers that I do have. The other thing in the box, we've got some zip ties in here. Oh, look at this. There is a filament. Man, that's going to be hard to see. Nozzle cleaning wire. It's in the foam here because they are pretty sharp. You can give yourself a bad splinter or a bad feeling of a splinter if you poke yourself with that. That's kind of cool. I didn't even know that came with that. If you guys have a printer that does not have these, I can recommend going and checking out Repcord. Pooch has these on his Amazon store. They are definitely super helpful when you do get something jammed in the nozzle. This would be like your first line of defense to clearing that nozzle and getting back up and printing pretty quickly. So these are good to have. I'm going to put that back in the bag because, as you can see, they are super tiny. This has a 0.4 millimeter nozzle on it, so this is a 0.4 millimeter piece of wire. I believe they're made out of spring steel. So we've got some zip ties in the bag. I'm sure we'll find out here in a little bit what those are for. Probably cable management would be my guess. And another almost essential tool to any 3D printer setup, a pair of side cutters. The really tiny, like craft side cutters. These things are, if you don't have one, if you're in the US, you can go to Walmart. Hold it over there where you can see it. You can go to Walmart and get these in the craft aisle. You can go to the hardware stores and get them. These things are awesome for cleaning up prints, cutting supports off, cutting your filament so that it's square on the end. I always like to take my filament, stick it right down in, hold it over here, right down in the angle of the cutters, and cut like a point on it just to help guide it through on especially on my 2 printers that are Bowden setups. It just makes it a little bit easier, rather than having a square blunt end on it. Yeah, Dave said the needle that comes with it is actually an acupuncture type needle for cleaning the nozzle. Avoid it on top. Dave also said, as far as the spool holder, avoid mounting it on top. The way the feeder is mounted is best sitting beside the printer. Good point. I'll have to keep that in mind with my spool holder setup that I have in my office. So we've got that in the bag. Let's see what else we got. And I'm seeing directions in here. I figured I was a fool for even asking if they came with directions. Let's see, we've got, oh, look at that. It comes with extra nozzles. There's extra, so we've got an extra nozzle in there. I'm guessing that's probably a 0.4 millimeter. Might actually be a bigger one. Could be a 0.6. A lot of people printing with printers this big want to upsize their nozzles so that you can print big faster. Let's see. There's another long Allen bolt in here with a lock washer. There's a pneumatic fitting. Not sure if that will. Looks like those are all in place on the printer already, so that's probably just a spare. And then here's some more Allen screws or Allen bolts with the T-nuts for the aluminum extrusions. So this is probably going to be for assembly. Oh, no, it's not. It actually says right on there, spare parts. So it's always nice getting spare parts with your printers. If you don't use it on your printer, you'll probably eventually print a print that you could use those parts on. So now we've got the directions for the printer. There is a lot of Chinese. It says Creality 3D. After sales service card. Lots of Chinese. There's the English. After sales service registration form. So here's your registration card for your printer. Let's see. Tells you parts excluded from the Creality warranty. Build tape, build plate, acrylic cover. Not sure what acrylic cover that is. SD card, USB stick, filament, and filament spool are not covered under the warranty. What is not covered. Unable to provide valid after-sales service card or serial number, including but not limited to lost, altered, or fuzzy, cannot be confirmed. out of warranty period. Damages caused by improperly, typical warranty thing. Just kind of glancing over this. Basically, if you break it or you can't prove that Creality broke it, Creality's not going to support it. But again, if you do have a problem with one, if you get it from Printed Solid, contact those guys if you do have a problem with it out of the box. Again, they're not going to be able to warrant if you break it. But if it genuinely shows up with a problem from Printed Solid, those guys they're good guys. They'll take care of you. So we got the warranty registration and all that stuff. CR-10 lead screw fixing installation instructions. To prevent the couplings from being damaged during transport, the two jack screws are not locked, as the following picture shows. Installation steps. Remove the thin film and put the lead screw into the bottom of the coupling. Use the M2 inner hexagonal wrench to tighten the two jack screws. Not sure, but that may already be done from Printed Solid. Dave, if that is, I'm sure I'll get there and find out, but you can punch it in the chat there and I'll say it out loud if it is. Alright, so we've got the preparation. Let's see, what else is in the box? We'll get back to the directions. There is looks like maybe a 250 gram spool of white PLA. This is the typical filament that you see everybody getting with their CR-10s. It's CC tree filament. I've heard good things and I've heard bad things about this, so I guess we'll find out. There is a USB to micro SD card thumb drive reader or dongle to plug the micro SD card in to your computer, and it looks like the SD card is in that reader. Another essential 3D printing tool. This is just a generic putty knife scraper. It does have a sharp edge on it, so it is one of those things you want to be careful. If you want to know what kind of damage these can do, Google 3D printer injuries. This is probably the #1 cause for somebody using a razor blade or something to pop their print off the bed. But again, essential tool to a 3D printer. So if this is your first printer, it really looks like they're going to have you all set up with the tools. There's an empty baggie. There's the other part of the filament spool holder. This is the actual spool holder part. So that'll unscrew. There's a nut. Can't really see it. There's a nut. There's the spool holder. That sticks through like that. And you put the nut on the back. It's kind of hard to do this and show it. There we go. So you just screw it on there. Nice and snug. And now you have part of your filament spool holder. We kind of skipped through some directions there. Hey, there's my benchy. So here's the benchy that my printer printed at Printed Solid. Now, I have to admit, this is my very first benchy, and I didn't even get to print it. Daniel Norray is the one who came up with the 3D benchy. It's a good calibration test for your printer. Has some decent overhangs here. You've got the angle that the front of the boat, the bow of the boat comes up. There's holes in it that it's got to print. And the idea of this is to print it with no supports. On the bottom, looks like this one might have been a little bit close to the bed, but it normally would say 3D benchy on the bottom, indented up into the print. And again, no support, so you're bridging right there. Bridging the roof. But, I mean, again, this is my first benchy. I've never actually printed one, but that's actually looking pretty good. And just so you know, the benchy does not float. It's been proven the benchy is a Titanic if you stick it in the water. Let's see. Here's next bag is filament holder screws. This is actually looks like all the hardware to put the Z tower onto the Y-axis carriage. or the bottom frame. Got a USB cable. That pretty much comes standard with any 3D printer. There is, so Dave lied to me a little bit. There is one 3D printed part on this printer. And it's in black, so it's not going to show up very well. But this part does not take any stress. This is your filament runout sensor. So filament goes in one side, comes out the other. There's a micro switch. There's the connections for it. Basically, the filament's in there passing through the micro switch, and if you run out, the switch springs out and shuts the printer down, pulses it. Dave's firmware for the printer using Marlin 116, I believe, actually brings the head over and parks it to the side rather than just letting it sit right on top of your print. If your nozzle or your printer shuts down and the nozzle stays hot, or even stays in one spot touching the print while it cools down, you'll get like a zip from it. Dave's firmware prevents that from happening, I believe, because it moves the head off to the side instead of actually sitting there burning your print. So we got the filament runout sensor. There's an extra piece of Bowden tube in here. Like I said, we're going to swap that out for the Capricorn tube that I got from Printed Solid. There's a guarantee card, English on one side, Chinese on the other. And that's pretty much it. So there's my Benchy warranty card and the Bowden tube. That's pretty much all that's in the box. Okay, let's get on to some assembly. Get all the unnecessary stuff out of the way. Here's our tools. Here's our support piece, connecting pieces, filament runout sensor, and the control box. I'm going to set the control box off to the side for now because we don't need that till it's all assembled anyhow. And the power cord can go over there. This can go over there. Okay, so first things first, Dave said I can cut the zip ties, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the zip ties. And Dave did confirm in the chat. His firmware, the hot end moves over to the side and parks and actually unloads. It backs out its filament as well, which is, again, something really nice to have done. I've actually set up all my printers now that when a print finishes, it automatically retracts all the filament out of the printer, except for my Bowdens. I have it just pull it up out of the hot end and park there. It's actually kind of nice when you go to swap filaments from one print to the next. You don't have to wait for the printer to preheat just to put the filament in it. Excuse me. Alright, spatula, we don't need you. So, let's use our handy dandy cutters that came with the printer. And let's cut these zip ties off of here. If you guys can hear some noise going on in the background, sounds like a printer running or something, let me know. But I don't even know that you guys will hear it or that it'll be too much of a nuisance. Alright, I need some room. Set that there. Bring this back up here. And I'm going to turn it around. Just from my experience with the printer, or with printers, typically your Y extruder step, or yeah, your Y axis stepper will go towards the back of the printer. So I'm going to just set it up that way, double check the directions beforehand, because I do have the Tivo Tarantula, the steppers on the front of it. Okay. Now, I know this is taking longer on the stream. Most people who I've heard set up this printer say that it takes approximately an hour to 2 hours to set up from opening the box to printing. I'm taking a little bit longer just to go over things with you guys, so it normally would not take this long. There's some more foam underneath the bed to hold it in place during shipping. Looks like we got all that out. I know. Oh no, that's. So on that warranty card, it said about the acrylic plate not being covered under warranty. The CR-10S does not have an acrylic plate that the bed mounts to. It's actually aluminum or some sort of metal. And it looks to be a powder coated metal as well. Alright, so we're going to get that cord out of the way. Let's follow the directions. Let's do it step by step. So, number one, you have your base. And it shows it wrapped in saran wrap. I cut that off. You have your Z module. Step 3. You gotta love these instructions. Step 3, install parts. So it says install I need the M5 by 25 millimeter Allen screws, the Z limit, which is in this bag, as well as the T-fixed block. So let's get those out. So here's the Z end stop, the T block. Oh, and this is kind of nice. So one thing that Dave did when he put this together at Printed Solid, he put, I'm not sure if it comes this way or not, but the bolts are actually in the brackets already that you need. Losing parts. Okay, so there's the 5 screws that I need. Sorry, 4 screws that I need. Take and make sure that the lock washers are put on those screws right away. Some of them fell off in transportation from Printed Solid to my house. So we'll get those prepared. And there are also some thumb screws here. Not sure what those are for yet. I'm sure we'll figure it out. The directions say that I do not need those. So, start. Open the packaging, take out all the parts. Did that. Compare to picture 3. Take out and install parts from toolbox. Take out install parts. So that's what these parts are here that we've got in front of us. Start by installing 3.1 by M5X25 screws. Connect the base with the XZ module. So in the blue runners on the printer, you can see a cutout in those. You guys can see it right here. That is where your Z-axis is going to mount. So we'll take that. And first thing I gotta do is move. Do it. Maybe not. No. Okay, I thought the X-axis was down too far, but actually it looks like it's pretty good. So I'm gonna move that up. Now I can see where, when the guys at Printed Solid assembled this, you can see a little bit of scuffing on the paint or the powder coating, whatever's on it. That kind of helps you to align everything a little bit better. Dave said that the sound goes bad when I get closer to the camera. Thanks, Raster Ops. Dave said that the bolts in the T-brackets and stuff, sometimes they come in place, sometimes they don't, so they do it on all of them. They make sure that it's good. Pro tip, install the M... See, this is the cool part about having Dave. Dave has assembled, I'm not sure exactly how many, I think they get like 16 of them at a time or something like that. So Dave and Alex at Matter Hackers, I'm sorry, Printed Solid have assembled quite a few of these. So it's nice having Dave in the chat here with me. Pro tip, install the M5 25 volts from the bottom before putting the side plates on. Ah, I see what you're talking about, Dave. So I'm going to take this and move it over here just so I don't knock it down, because I thought I almost did earlier. So underneath the Y-axis, or the base plate, is where these M5 bolts are going to go. So we're going to stick that up through the bottom there. Going to stick this up through the bottom. We'll do the same thing over here. They're going to stay in place or they're going to fall out. Place this down. Okay, so now I should be able to tell you what. I'm going to set this up on its side. Get that out of here. Bring the Z in just like this. Oh, we gotta go the other way. And one of the things you guys can see, I'm being careful as I'm flipping this around not to let the bed just slide back and forth as well. Dave, I need another pro tip. There's probably such a better way to do this than how I'm doing it. Alright, I'm just going to get the screws started by hand. You never want to use a tool on tapped threads until you know that you got it in. Just finger thread it in by hand so you can feel it, grab a hold, and make sure you're not cross-threaded. Now, these are a little bit difficult to do, but they definitely are a snug fit, that's for sure. Ah, okay. Dave said the way I was doing it with the printer kind of off the table to get things, I have the Z on the table and the y-axis off the table is one of the best ways to do it. For at home, now at Printed Solid, when they're assembling these, because they're going to be doing a lot of them, they've created a 2x4 jig that they can sit everything in and keep it, probably makes it super easy to do. But for at home, just make sure that you're supporting it without putting pressure on your the rods, the linear rods for the Z-axis, because again, you don't want to be bending those. So make sure you're not grabbing a hold of the threaded rod. And Dave's my virtual third hand. I appreciate it, Dave. I'd get it figured out, but it makes me look a little less dumb on the stream then, I guess. So we probably don't need the wrenches, just the Allen, or the open-ended wrenches. We can put them to the side most likely. Just get the Allen wrenches out here. And run those in. I'm glad you told me that, Dave. Now I'm not going to go through and tighten these up until they're all just barely running all the way down and bottoming out. Once I get them all to that position, then I'll go through and actually tighten them all down. Look. Yeah, we'll just stop and get them. We're fine. Okay, now that I got those all down and close, we're going to move this back off the table again and actually go through and snug these down. Now when you're tightening these down, remember the frame of this thing is made out of aluminum, so don't go He-manning it. You want to get them nice and tight, but don't overdo it. You can easily take and strip out threads on that. Dave said that his next pro tip is to use the plain T-bracket on the side away from the extruder motor. So this one's going to go over there. The one with the limit switch goes on this side. It's actually a good point. I mean, somebody assembling their first printer may not actually know that. Dave, Jen's over here saying, what would I do without you? So they've already got these on here loose that you can stick the T-nuts in the slot. Alright, so that's in. Now the way the T-nuts work is you put them in straight, and then as you start to turn it, the nut will actually turn and lock into the aluminum extrusions on the rails of the printer. I guess these are actually V-slot. They're not true square T-slots. So again, the T bracket with the Z end switch on it, and this is obvious. The one's plain, it's just a piece of metal stamped out in the shape of a T with 4 screws on it. The other one has an electronic switch with a wire connection on it. So you really can't get that wrong, as long as you follow that step. So we're going to make these, again, same deal. Make them nice and tight, but don't go wrenching on it. They are Chinese Allen wrenches. Sometimes you'll round them off pretty easily, or the ball in the end. I've had that snap off on these. I always keep a set of Allen wrenches nearby the printers that are good, strong steel. Okay, so that one's snug. Now I'm going to go around to the back side here and do the exact same thing over here, except with just plain T bracket. If you guys have any questions about this in the chat, I'm sure Dave would be more than happy to answer any questions anybody has. If you have a CR-10 that you're assembling and you have some questions, then Dave's put together quite a few of them. He's probably a master at this point at putting together CR-10s. Okay, so we got the T slot or the T brackets on. Fixed block and Z limit. Did that. Connect motor and limit lines. Connect nozzle and hotbed interference. So besides the control box, that's it. The printer's put together. That was literally 8. Sorry, how many screws was that? 8, 10, 12 screws to put this thing together. That's easy. I think the Wanhao, when I got that, it comes in the same configuration as this. Most of your i3s that are not a full kit build come something similar to this, but you still have a lot of screws to put together. I think the Wanhao, that I think I only had like 6 or 8 screws to put together on that as well. But Wanhao is one of your better known brands, so this is being a cheaper printer. I mean, this is even cheaper than the Wanhao DI3s are. So let's turn this around so you guys can see how I'm connecting these. Same deal when you're picking up your printer. See how I'm grabbing it by the frame and not the Z-axis. I can't stress that enough. Do not pick up your printer by the Z-rods. Pick it up by the aluminum frame itself if you're going to pick it up. Alright, so we'll get this out of here. Still not sure what these little thumb screws are for, but they may come back around again. Dave, if you know what the thumb screws are for and would tell me, that would be awesome. Let's see. Dave said his last 2 tips. When you get into the wiring, it will all make sense except for the one unlabeled wire. That is for the filament sensor. The filament sensor is a simple pressure fit on the sheet metal holding the extruder motor. This tip is the #1 question I get asked. Because, yeah, I mean, the directions that come with it don't actually mention the filament runout sensor. Oh, the thumb screws are for the filament spool holder. That makes sense. Directions don't tell you that either, do they? They do not, but you can kind of, if you look close enough, you can see it on the pictures, on the directions. So we'll get to those in a minute. So let's do the filament runout sensor. It's got a slot, kind of, if I get it over here, you can see the slot there. That's just kind of pressure fit right on to the extruder plate. And that definitely, that's a super snug fit. Now it's interesting, that does have, it almost looks like screw mount holes, but the plate itself doesn't have holes in it. And I have seen a few people talk about that if you do get a nozzle jam, the filament sensor will pop off and you come back to just a pile of filament unspooled laying on the floor. I could see that happening, but honestly, that thing's on there pretty tight as it is. If you do experience that problem, I'm not warning your printer if you do this, but it looks like you could run some screws, drill some holes and make some screws to mount that on more permanently. But there may be a good reason why you don't want that on permanent as well. It may be beneficial at times to be able to get that off and out of the way, like when you're loading your filament. Okay, so electrical. I'm going to put all the wrenches away. By the sounds of it, we are done with those. Put a screwdriver in here and get that out of there. Okay, so on the control brick, I guess you call it, control box, you have all these wires. They have, ooh, they went fancy with it. There's little plastic clips, like that one's labeled Z. This is actually kind of nicer than like wire labels and things like that. Cables are kind of short. Okay. So there's the E, which would be your extruder stepper. There's your other Z, and you can tell these two Z's, one's short, one's long. Obviously, the short one goes to the Z on the side towards the box. Long one goes to the Z on the other side of the printer. Tell you what, I'm going to connect these as I go through and find them. So we've got the small Z will go to the small Z plug that only has 2 wires to it is going to be your end stop. Which is on that T bracket that you put on this side. One suggestion I'd have that I'm seeing right now, with that Z end stop, might be a good idea to plug that in before you put the T bracket on. I mean, it's doable without it. I just snapped it in there, but it is in between the bottom frame and the plug. So it might not be a bad idea to just plug that in before you actually put that T bracket on. So I'm going to plug in the Z stepper motor on the side of the control box. I got the other long Z wire here. Just double check to make sure the connections are right. Z. I'm going to bring that over to this side. And this is where your zip ties will come in handy for cable management, so that you don't have this out here. You can take and bring it under here and strap it to the back frame on the Y. All these plugs have 2 little lines on them. When you look at the plug on the steppers, there's one side's completely flat with plastic. The other side has like an open area. That's where those 2 lines go. Just for anybody who hasn't done any kind of electrical. So here's that wire Dave was talking about that has no label. That is going to go to the filament runout sensor. there you go. Let's see, we've got 2 wires here in a bundle. That's going to be the Y and the YN stop. Again, the 2-wire one goes to the YN stop, the switch, and the 4-wire one will go to the extruder, or the stepper motor. So we got those. Let's see, we've got 3 bundled together here. Obviously, you've got the webbing bundles on here. That's going to kind of guide you that these 3 wires are going to go similar to the same area. Yeah, Keith, I got one. I was holding off for the S5, but I couldn't pass up getting it with the Wanhao dying. I know you said you got a motherboard, which I'd still like to talk to you about because I do want to get the Wanhao up and running. But with the craft show tomorrow, I had to do something. So I ended up going down to Printed Solid and getting one today, just biting the bullet, hoping we pay for it tomorrow at the craft show. Alright, so we've got the X stepper motor. We have the XN switch, which is over here on the side. Oh, you know what? I didn't do that right. The X stepper motor, not the extruder. Then the XN switch. And then this should be E for extruder. Oh, okay, that's going to ride together. Now, one thing you do want to probably do with this is your control box. Like Dave said, your control box is going to actually sit up here with the back of the control box almost in line with the Z tower, so that this wire has enough room that it can move all the way up. What I would probably do, and I'm going to hold off on doing this till after I do the first tall test print or run the Z all the way up. Just make sure where I'm at, and I'll probably find a way to strap these wires to the Z carriage as it's going up and down, or the X carriage as it moves up and down, I should say. And the last thing we have is the bed heater. I'm sorry, not the last thing. We have these nice, I forget the name of these connectors, but it's 4 prongs with a groove in it so that you can't hook it up backwards. But then it's got a nut that you can, thumb screw that you can, it's a thumb nut that you can tighten up on the back of the control box to make sure that it stays in. So we've got the one to the bed. That's kind of obvious. It goes straight to the bed. That is going to go to the only 4-port on the back of the control box. And again, that's got a little registration mark in these jacks, so you can't hook it up backwards. And then you've got the one that's going to the hot end with the Bowden tube on it. Again, before we even do the test print, I'm going to take that Bowden tube off and put the Capricorn tube on. Aviation connectors. Thanks, Dave. Hold off on the S5. I have one on the way to me to tear apart and figure out. I hear horror stories, so I wouldn't trust one until I knew they got all the problems fixed. That's good to know, Dave. Yeah, I mean, the S5 is basically a giant, well, I shouldn't say giant, but a bigger version of this that's a 16 by 16 by 16 build area. Would have been really cool to get one of those, but I'm also looking at close to $1,000, I think, like $800 to $900 for one of those. So it was a little bit out of my price range. Maybe sometime down the road, if our Etsy shop takes off or something, and can start to fund my habit a little bit more. I just got to look from my wife over her shoulder. So anyhow, back to it. The hot end connection, again, is obvious. It goes right to the hot end on the X carriage. Same deal, aviation connector with a registration mark on it. And when you plug these in, you just kind of hold it there, keep turning it until it slides in. And in my case, the registration mark was straight up and down. That may not be the same on everybody's. If they don't have that in the same orientation when they tighten the nut down on the inside, it may be different for you guys. So that's the printer and the electrical. Let's do the filament spool holder on the control box. Again, like I said, I probably personally won't use the filament holder on the control box. I know Dave, the S5 is about $1,000. Dave said, and Chris from Practical Printing, and I agree with them. Don't mount it to the top of the printer. You can try it. I mean, you're not going to hurt anything by doing it necessarily. But Dave said you do have some problems with the Bowden tube having to come down from the top into the filament runout sensor, which makes sense because it's got to come down and go through that. If you make it too hard of an angle, you might have some problems there. Or if you have a brittle filament, it might snap off there or something like that. So we'll take and bring this back here for a second to the side. I think you guys can kind of see that. So you got these thumb screws. They are, I wonder how they show that in the picture. The spool holder, oh, okay, it goes like this. So your spool holder goes over top of the control box, not off to the side like this. I have seen pictures of people assembling them off this way, which probably has a tendency to want to tip over. And maybe that's where some of the complaints of the control box tipping over while printing with bigger spools, maybe that's where it came in, I'm not sure. Okay, so we got that hooked up. Last but not least is the most important part to making this printer functional, power cord. Yeah, Dave said earlier in the chat, this is the 300 by 300 CR-10. The S5, I think that's 500 by 500, and the S4 is 400 by 400. I think the S4 is 400 by 400 by 300, if I'm not mistaken. Keith said the biggest complaint was the fan noise. Had to replace them. Can't stand much noise. I've got 5 printers, or this will be the 5th printer on the desk. Technically 4 right now. If you want to count the TiVo, make it 3.5 printers on my desk. Although this one's going to end up having to go behind my desk because I don't have any more room on my desk. So yeah, noise at this point is kind of gone out the window. But my office is down in my basement. You can't hear the printers. Every now and then you hear the whining noise from the stepper motors. You can sometimes hear that upstairs, but honestly, sometimes for me, that's more of a reassurance that, yep, the printer's still running. I don't even have to go down the steps to find out.
We have children.
Yeah. My wife just said, we have children. They make a lot more noise than the printer. That's the noise that cuts through you. She also can't believe I just said that. All right, so let's get this thing turned around. And I think we're getting close to being ready to fire it up. So here's the other reason why I don't like loose control boxes. You almost need 2 sets of hands just to turn the printer or pick it up and move it. With the fact that I'm going to be taking this printer to craft shows and vendor shows with us, every time I take it somewhere, the electrical connections are all going to get taken apart. The one thing I did forget to do yet. Let's get this Bowden tube out of here. So they've got some gaffer's tape or similar tape around the hot end wiring and the Bowden tube. Thanks, Raster Ops. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, Keith, I saw Tim has firmware and Dave has firmware for it. I'm going to do this test print with it, and on Dave's recommendation, because of the mesh bed leveling, I'm probably going to load up Dave Randolph's firmware and see how that goes first. Dave, you're good at these pro tips. Keep them coming. Dave said if you slide the bed all the way to the back, then you can set the control box on the bed behind the Z tower and then carry the machine around. Good point. I didn't even give that a thought, but that's a really good point. So if I take and slide the bed the whole way back like that, the control box, this is not a handle, by the way. I almost did it. You can pick up the control box and actually sit it back here on the bed. Good point. But yeah, Keith, the nice thing about the CR-10S, like Dave had said earlier back at the beginning of the stream, it's running a ramps compatible board, which means flashing the firmware is easier than the original CR-10 was. The CR-10 you could flash the firmware, but I understand it was a little bit more difficult to do it. This is any ramps compatible software that can flash firmware, like Cura, you can use to flash it. Keith, Dave has his, I don't know if he's calling it his or the Printed Solid edition or what as far as the software goes. Go to printedsolid.com and look at their blog. It's the second post. The first one right now, or most recent, is the Black Friday stuff. The second one is Dave's firmware, and the link's like 3 or 4 sentences down to the hex file to flash it with Cura, or like Repetier Host or any of the software that can flash the hex files to the ramps boards. Can't get the Bowden tube out. Let's see, what do those wrenches look like? It's enough to depress it. So for those of you who don't have a Bowden printer, you have these pneumatic fittings that the tubing presses into. And look at that. It's not actually meant for it, but that wrench that they give you is almost perfect to disconnect that. So there's pneumatic fittings, though. You push a button on the top that's around the tube, and then pull out on the tube to release it. You're trying to get my attention. Dave, what's the trick to these pneumatic fittings? They're pretty snug. Yeah, Dave has the complete rundown on all the settings that he changed on Marlin 116, which is the newer versions of Marlin. This, I think Dave told me it has like 106 or something like that on it. I don't know if it's even that recent. Initially, out of the box, it has that. Man, I can't get that thing out of there. So what I'm doing, I can't get the Bowden tube out of the pneumatic fitting. So again, they supply the wrenches to be able to take the pneumatic fitting right out of the top of the hot end, out of the cooling block on the hot end. Like Keith was saying, this is a pretty open design on this printer. His complaint was noise from the printer, so he got quieter fans and put them on. If you are going to have the printer somewhere, say in your living room, or I've seen people with them in their dining room, you can get quieter parts for these printers as well. So now that I have that out of here, it's really easy to remove this. Maybe. Yeah. We'll just take it off the rest of the way and pull the pneumatic fitting off. For some reason, that thing doesn't want to release. Again, normally you would not have to do this. I'm doing this so that I can swap out the stock PTFE tube with a Capricorn tube that I got down at Printed Solid today as well. There we go, now it released. I'll show you guys here in a second why that was so difficult to do that. I'm trying to not cut the gaffer's tape. I have some here that I can rewrap on this, but this stuff actually seems to be pretty decent gaffer's tape on here. So I'm hoping to just rewrap my new Capricorn tube right on that. Yeah, Dave has a good point there. If the PTFE tube is really stuck on that pneumatic fitting if you decide to replace it or you need to pull it off for some reason, don't forget it does come with spares. There we go. Old PTFE tube. Throw that in the box. We've got the new Capricorn tube. Dave, do you recommend cutting the Capricorn tube down to the same size as the CR-10 PTFE tube that came on it? Or have you seen any issues with leaving it long? I typically will leave mine long with the cheaper PTFE tubes, just because over time, pulling them in, pulling them out, eventually you want to cut it off and get a fresh end. They shipped with version 1.02 of Marlin. Marlin is currently up to, I think 1.16 is the latest. Use the old one, measure it out, and cut it. Okay. So to measure this out, I'm just gonna line up one end, slide my hand across. Now that little bit of a bend in it from the way it was packed in shipping, and it kind of got like a little bit of a memory in it. This stuff's pretty forgiving, so you just kind of want to straighten it out as much as you can, get close. I'm going to give it just a little bit extra. Like I said, I like to have more than I need. So I'm going to give it about an inch to an inch and a half, or whatever that is, about maybe 30 millimeters of extra, 3 centimeters. To cut this, you want to use a sharp knife. That's actually not sharp enough, so give me a second. I'm going to go grab a razor blade. Yeah, like Dave just said in the chat, you want to use a really sharp razor blade. That way you don't crush the tubing. And of course, as always, with a really sharp knife, really careful. But look at that. That's how easy that cut. I barely even pushed on it. Brand new razor blade. Don't do yourself wrong. Use a brand new one when you do it. Cool thing is, now I got 2 pieces of Capricorn tube. So that other one's probably going to go in another printer. We're going to just double check. Make sure that I got the one that's the right length. And thread the pneumatic fitting back in here. Again, for anybody who's just joining, this is not something you normally would have to do, taking this out, but I'm doing an upgrade right away out of the box. Same deal with this as the screws on the frame. Snug it up. Don't go super crazy with it though. And now when you push this in, what you might want to do is take your old tube. Yeah, over here. It's kind of hard to see it on camera there. But there's a mark on this tube from the old pneumatic tube. Take your new one and just come back just a little bit from it. That tells you this much of that's going to stick down into the heater block right down to the nozzle. This is not an all-metal hot end, so you do have PTFE tube going all the way down. That does limit you on higher temperature things, but my opinion personally, a printer this size in this configuration is probably better suited for your lower temperature filaments. It could still do the higher temp, like up around 250, 260 and above. But because of the build volume, you're not going to utilize that whole build volume in a lot of cases, printing some of those higher temperatures. Again, without building a heated enclosure and doing all that, or an enclosure, if not a heated enclosure, because you're going to need higher bed temperatures for the hotter filaments to stick to it in most cases. And if you're going to go to the extent of building an enclosure or buying an enclosure, then you want to oh, good point, Dave. If you're going to go to the extent of buying or building an enclosure for your CR-10, chances are you're probably going to be swapping out that hot end anyhow with an all-metal, either an E3, V6, or something to that extent. I'm not going that route yet. I really, besides the Capricorn tube, I want to see what the CR-10 can do before I do any kind of real modifications at all to the printer. The good point that I mentioned, Dave said that the teeth, they may have come with a cutter. Oh, that's a separate purchase. I didn't buy the kit. I've worked this out a little bit different with Matt. So I didn't get the kit. I just got the tubing. Dave was saying before connecting this, just to take some filament, cut the end off, feed it through here just to make sure it feeds freely. That way, if you do have a problem with it, you know it in advance. So I'm going to find my handy dandy little cutters wherever they got to. Oh, they fell on the floor over here. So I'm going to take some of my rep cord filament here, cut the end off so I've got a nice clean cut piece of filament. And then we'll feed it through by hand once. This is a good point. I mean, the Capricorn tubes are a premium PTFE tube, but even premium sometimes can have manufacturing defects, or it could have gotten kinked or something like that. So there it comes. That fed super smooth through there. I'm just kind of curious. Here's the old one. Now this may bind up at the end of it just because Dave did print my benchy with this. I'm just kind of curious if I can actually feel much of a resistance difference in this. And actually, whoops, don't drop your full spool of filament. So you can see, you guys might have seen that stuff come flying out of the end. That's the filament that was down in the hot end. You know, it's hard to tell by hand, but it definitely feels like there's a little bit of a resistance in this tube, which is the original CR-10 tube. Alright, so back to putting this on. Again, take the two side by side, find that mark, and put your fingernail close to it so you know your depth. Sorry, Dave, I wasn't paying attention to the chat, but yeah, I see your comment there about trying the old tube. It definitely feels like there's a difference. Keith, you were mentioning the cutter and the kit coming with the cutter. Honestly, cutting it with that razor blade was pretty easy. I mean, that cut through like butter. So I'm going to push that down in there until it bottoms out. The other end of it is going to come over here to the extruder. And that's another one of those pneumatic fittings. You just push it in. When you push it in, most likely you'll kind of just feel it pop a little bit. It's like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. I realize we're all 3D printers. We all work in millimeters, but my head works in inches in the imperial system. So, but you'll feel it pop in there a little bit. I mean, it's a definite give. So got that in. I believe that's it. Dave, am I missing anything? Besides loading up some filament and hitting print on this? I think that's pretty much it. While we're waiting on Dave to respond, so far initial impressions on this thing is, again, it's taken however long we are now into the stream to do this, but I've been stopping, I've been talking. If I did this myself, man, this thing would have been pretty easy, although having Dave off to the side here, giving his pro tips, definitely helps cut some corners. But, I mean, in all reality, for somebody mechanically inclined, slightly mechanically inclined, this isn't bad to put together. As far as assembly goes, I'd definitely recommend this to most people who can use a wrench. It's not bad. I know plenty of people out there, my wife's over here laughing at me, I know plenty of people out there who don't know how to use a wrench. I might hesitate to recommend a 3D printer in general to those people, but if you can work wrenches, this was pretty easy. Yeah, I popped the tube into the extruder motor assembly. I already got that, Dave. What is the fallout on the beds not being flat from the factory? No, Dave, you can answer Keith there in the chat then. So I think we're good to go. I don't think we're missing anything at this point, except for somehow I'm going to unplug the hot end. I just realized that I have this coming around this side of the printer. Probably should go around the back side there. And that's the wires for the hot end. So switch that around. I'm going to rewrap the Capricorn tube with the wiring harness just to keep that stuff nice and rigid, or semi-rigid. The Capricorn tube, or your PTFE tube that's on here, kind of acts like a support for the wires to keep them up out of the way. If you peel this gaffer's tape off, I'm guessing this is gaffer's tape. It's some kind of either gaffers or cloth tape. Sticks back to itself pretty well. It doesn't seem like it's leaving any residue on it, which is the reason why I didn't want to use the gaffer's tape I have. The gaffer's tape I have leaves some residue over time. It's good for temporary stuff, but not permanent. Okay, so We are plugged. No, we're not. We're about to be plugged in. My wires are a mess. You definitely want to do some cable management on a printer like this, but make sure that all your cables are free, especially the cables that are going to the X carriage or the Z carriage, I guess you'd call it. This section that's going to be moving up and down. So it's your extruder motor, your X-axis extruder or stepper, and the hot end. Make sure that those three cables are free because you want it to be able to move the whole height of the printer. The first thing I'm going to do before I run a test print is just make sure I'm going to run my Z all the way up and just make sure that it is that wires aren't getting snagged or anything. Yeah, Dave's looking into trying to take care of, when you're talking a big bed like this, it's a piece of aluminum, or printed circuit board on the bottom of aluminum for the heater. It's a big piece of metal. It's only maybe 3 or 4 millimeters thick. It's easy to get tweaked and bent, and that's what a lot of people are experiencing. That's where one of the benefits to paying a little bit more money and buying it from Printed Solid comes in handy. Because you've got guys like Dave who are actually going over this stuff and making sure it's good to go. And if it's not good to go, they're coming up with ways to improve it. So, let's power it up. There's a switch on the back. One of the things everybody likes to look at, I can't disagree, there is the PCE plug on the back for the power cord. It is a fused connection, and then you have a toggle switch right on the back. Turn it on, display lights up, and it says the 3D printer is ready. Now this does have a jog dial on it that acts as a button, so we'll hit that. We do not have an SD card in yet, which is fine. We'll get to that. So I'm going to go to Control, Main. Okay, go to Prepare, Move Axis, and I'm going to move 10 millimeters. First, okay, I guess 1 millimeter. Move the Z. Okay. So the one thing I said, the directions told me to do this, and I kind of skipped it thinking that it was already done. Because of shipping, the couplers from the extruder to the Z linear rods are loose. So you do have to tighten that down in order for anything to happen. That's why as I'm turning that, nothing was happening. It wasn't moving anywhere. So I'm going to get out the bag of wrenches again. There's a tiny little set screw that's actually, I should have seen that. It's actually sticking out of the coupler, so it's obvious that it's not tightened up. Find the right Allen wrench. There's actually 2 of them on each one, so we'll tighten that down. Tighten this one down. Alright, so that's tightened up. So let's try that again. Okay, so we're going to go to prepare, move axis, move 1 millimeter, move Z. And now we're going to, there we go. Now we're moving the Z axis. So I'm going to go ahead and run that up. We'll go to 200 millimeters. Oh, that's interesting. Not sure where we're going to stop now, but I'm watching my wires here to make sure nothing gets snagged. We do have the zip ties to do cable management on the printer once we have everything the way we like it. I don't like to zip tie everything until I'm absolutely sure, because usually I'm not sure and I end up having to cut my zip ties back off. Now the jog dial on this is a little bit touchy. You can see the Z-axis is actually going back down again because I kind of screwed up. So what I'm going to do is let it go until it decides to stop. Now it's going back up because, again, I was jogging the dial back and forth. That's the only thing I don't really care for on the printers with the jog dials. They are extremely touchy. But again, this thing's going to end up getting a Raspberry Pi on it with Octoprint or 3D Printer OS or something on it, so that I can manage the printer. Tell you what, let's cheat. Just tell it to stop. Turn the power off and turn it back on. Okay, so we're going to hit the jog dial. I'm going to do what I should have done the first time. I'm going to hit repair, and I'm going to home the axes just to make sure everything goes in the right directions. When I do this, I'm going to make sure I got my finger on the power switch in case something does go the wrong direction. So there's the X, there's the Y, and the Z is going to come back down. So everything's going in the right direction. Now, I still want to be prepared. It's possible that if you didn't plug your end switch in properly on one of the axes, that it'll hit the switch and it won't stop trying to go down because it doesn't see the switch closed. Dave's on top of this. So apparently on Printed Solid, I'm assuming, there is a blog post about the jog knob, to the jog dial, to make it less touchy, more or less touchy. So I'm going to be checking that out. I'm kind of curious if that'll work on the Tivo tarantula as well. Okay, so we've homed. I was talking to you guys. I didn't have my hand on the power switch, but I got lucky. I had it plugged in properly. So now I want to run the Z-axis up just to check my wiring. So I'm going to move axis, or go to prepare, move axis, move 1 millimeter, move Z, and the reason I homed is that put Z at 0. So we're going to go ahead and run it up. I'm doing this a little bit gentler than I did before. Normally I just kind of take the jog dial. When I want to go 300 millimeters, I just spin it. So there's 84. Earlier, before I turned it off, when I just spun it, my numbers were going up. I hit 200, then all of a sudden I was down to like 115. So I'm doing it a little bit slower this time so I don't have that happening again. That's what was causing it to go up and down on me. So there's 200. I'm going to let it stop there for a second. Okay, so there's 200. Now from here, I'm not going to go up as much, and now is when I'm really watching my cables over here to make sure nothing's getting snagged. So that's going to go to 250. $280. So far, everything's looking good. There's 300. This thing's actually got a little bit more room you could push it. Over 300 millimeters by the looks of it. So, at this point, I'm up to 340 millimeters. Dave, what was the build volume on this? I thought it was 3 by 3 by 3, or 30 by 30 by 30. But at this point, I'm at 340, and I've got a little bit of room to go. Now I'm watching my Bowden tube here as well, because the last thing I want to do is get up high enough to the point that that's going to get pinched or anything. I thought this maxed out at 300 millimeters, but okay, now I'm getting close on the extruder stuff. I'm at 380. So 400 millimeters. Looks like I can safely print up to 400. Yep, Dave just said 300 by 300 by 400. I was thinking it was 300 cubed. So cables look good. There's no excess tension on those. So what I'm going to do is, while I've got it up, now I'm going to zip tie those couple of wires together. And the other thing I want to do is I want to move my X all the way over. So this is up and over as far as it possibly can go. So we're going to go back to prepare. Move axis. Now I can do move 10 millimeters at a time. The Z, in the current Marlin firmware that's on here, the Z can only move 1 millimeter at a time. I know on my TiVo I modified that so that I could move the Z axis. I changed the menu. Dave may have done this as well to be able to move the Z a little bit quicker by 10 millimeter increments instead of 1 millimeter. And you can also move as slow as 0.1 millimeter as well. So I'm going to move my X. That's a 300 millimeter build area. So let's see. That's 200. So there's 300. A little bit of noise from this, but again, I'm also up the whole way. So now at this point, I can come back here and I can start to secure my wires with the zip ties and not have to worry that if I do a super big print in a week, if I do a super big print in a week, I don't have to worry that, you know, when I max out the printer at the very top of it, it's still going to be printing fine. It's not going to be getting bound up or anything and surprising me and failing a print. When you print something that big, the last thing you want is a failure. Because that's a lot of wasted filament. Unless you're a proud owner of a fill extruder or something like that, one of the protocyclers or something where you can make your own filament, then maybe you don't care quite as much, but I don't have that. What did I do with the there? Good point. Okay, so Dave recommended that before I tie the wires, maybe I'll do the test print here just for the sake of the stream, but to make sure that the nozzle can hit 240 degrees and the bed hits 80 degrees in a warm room. The garage here is probably about 65, 70 degrees, or the basement. It's about 65 to 70 degrees down here right now. He's saying in a warm garage, above 60 degrees, it should be able to hit 80 degrees on the bed. So Oh, actually, I'm going to hold off on doing the wire management for now. Let's get the test print going and see how that works out. So, for those of you who are still in the chat, what would you guys rather see me do? Use the filament that came with the CR-10 or use one of my filaments that I've got? I'll give you guys a minute there to answer that, and I'll be right back while you answer it.
Are you talking to yourself?
Use up the spool that's already open. I can't disagree with that, Dave or Keith. And actually, speaking of which, just one other thing about as far as the Creality goes, the whatever that is, 200 gram spool they sent, or 500 grams. It's not vacuum sealed. It does have a desiccant bag in it. I don't know. It could have nitrogen or something in it as well, but stock filament would be interesting. So we got one for an open spool, one for stock. Keith, I think let's go with the stock filament that came with it, just because it doesn't seem to be it's definitely not vacuum sealed. So let's see what it does. So while I'm loading this up and getting things warming up and everything, just so you guys do know, and again, towards the end of this stream, full disclosure, I bought the printer with my money. Printed Solid was the supplier of it. Dave and Matt are, I'd say, good friends of mine throughout the 3D printing community. My involvement with it, their involvement with it. But as far as the printer goes, as far as this unboxing and first print and assembly, this is all on me. Matt and Dave did not pay me to do this. They did not pay for my printer. I paid for it with my own hard-earned money, and this is all obviously my honest opinion. So far, I'm pretty happy with it. And I'm happy that I have the support of Printed Solid behind this printer as well. But this stream wasn't asked to be done by Printed Solid or anything, so just want to say thanks to those guys. They did do me a huge favor and stuck around this evening for me to drive an hour and a half to go pick up the printer. With all that disclaimer said, though, they are having Small Business Saturday sales tomorrow in kind of a continuation of their Black Friday sale. I think there's still a few things to be released as far as what that sale's going to entail, but they are doing some. Dave said, full disclosure, they did give me a bag of gummy bears. You gave my wife, Jen, ate the gummy bears.
No, we got a bag with all green ones.
Oh, she said they were all green, Dave. She's one of those that apparently the different colors taste different. So, anyhow, Printed Solid is having their Small Business Saturday sale. Starts tomorrow, or actually at this point, it's this morning in a few hours. Dave, if you want to post the times in the chat there, and they'll come up over here. If you guys are in the area, if Printed Solid, which is in Newark, Delaware, isn't too far away from you, within a reasonable drive, it may be worth your while to go and see what for sales they have tomorrow. Again, this isn't paid for by them. This is my opinion. Matt and Dave provide an awesome service, and I personally just want to, I want to push some business their way, and my honest opinion is that they deserve it. The work they put into it, the support that they give, and the involvement that they have in the community is just, you can't ask for somebody to do more than what they did. I know they were ready to go home tonight, and they stuck around for me. I mean, it wasn't late after they were going to be closing. It was just a few minutes, but there's plenty of big shop places out there that, you know, if you're not there at 6 o'clock, they're going to close their door. They don't care if you're buying a printer. They don't care if you're coming with cash and buying a printer. They're going to close the door. Matt and Dave stuck around for me. Didn't ask for cash. I had to give them a credit card. I didn't have to. But, I mean, just, what more can you ask for? Nowadays, everybody's got so busy. Those guys humped it today with Black Friday and getting all the sales out, or the orders out. I knew they were ready to go home by the time I got there. So just want to say thanks to them. And there are, again, down in the description, there is links to the CR-10S. That is a non-affiliate link. I do not have an affiliate link with Printed Solid. And there's also a link to the Capricorn tubes. If you guys would like to help out the channel and support how I do it, there's also a link down below for MakerBox. That is my referral code. For every 3 orders or referrals that I get where somebody purchases a 1-month MakerBox subscription, for every 3, I get my box for free. I mean, that's not a huge amount, but it's $20 a month that I can put towards something else, towards the channel, to make it better, to show you guys all kinds of other stuff, work on projects. So if you do want to support the channel, you can do that. I do have a Patreon. However, I did pull back from Patreon. I'm not committing to posting any updates there. I was asked by a few people to leave it open for donations. You can go on there and make a donation. There is no subscription fees or tiered plans anymore. So if you do want to support me that way, you can, and I greatly appreciate it, but that's totally up to you guys. The only reason I kept it was I was asked to. A few people wanted to continue to contribute to the channel, even though I was backing out of the obligation of posting to Patreon. Hopefully that'll be changing the channel. Hopefully we'll be seeing more and more content in the future. So let's get this thing heating up. Enough talking. I can't apparently talk and do this at the same time. So we're going to go to prepare, preheat PLA. I'm going to preheat PLA and bed. Now again, one of the things I've heard people complain about with this printer is they're using binder clips for the glass bed to hold it down. I can't say there's anything wrong with those, but they do stick into your build area by about 5 millimeters. So, I mean, you do have to kind of be conscious of that when you're printing. I used to use them on all my printers. I've since actually started just using blue painter's tape around the edge, because that way if I do accidentally print on it, it prints over the painter's tape. I might get a little bit of an imperfection in my first layer, but it works. As you guys can see in the chat here, doors open at 10 a.m. tomorrow on Saturday. Actually, it's today. Saturday the 27th, I believe. 25th. My calendar in my head's off. Saturday the 25th, 2017. Small Business Saturday at Printed Solid starts at 10 a.m. And I've heard they've got some good deals going on. Dave said to remove the masking tape from under the glass. So I'm going to go ahead and do that while the bed is warming up. And that's a good point because the masking tape under the glass is going to sort of change the way the heat transfer happens. So we will take that out there. I actually thought that was stuck on, Dave. I didn't realize that was loose. And if you guys haven't seen Ron, the Happy Extruder on Twitter, he took his CR-10, he modified it to be, it's now what he's calling the CR-1000. It's 1,000 millimeters tall. Thing's huge. He started showing us all up at Maker Faire, New York, back in September, and he's been trying to print some big stuff. I mean, he's got some issues with the height of it. It starts to wobble a little bit. But if you haven't checked that out, check him out. His channel, I believe his channel is the Happy Extruder, and on Twitter he's the Happy Extruder, or Happy Extruder. While this is warming up, some of the modifications that people are recommending is a really important one on the bed, putting strain relief on the solder connections back here on the bed. Now they do, I can feel there's tape underneath there to support it a little bit. Dave, you and I are on the same page. Dave said, to the top mods, heat bed strain relief print and thumb wheels. These little tiny thumb wheels on here aren't comfortable to grab on. They're not easy to grab on. You can print bigger ones. Coolest thing about 3D printers is you can modify your 3D printer and make it even better with your printer, as long as it prints. Alright, so the bed is up to 45 degrees already. Now I'm just heating up to PLA temperatures. I'm going to do, like Dave said, later after the stream, I'll heat the bed up to 100 degrees Celsius and the hot end, or I'm sorry, to heat the bed up to 80 degrees Celsius and the hot end up to 240 degrees before securing all the wiring, just to make sure everything can make it there. Yep, you guys can see in the chat, everybody's saying, Printed Solid is, they're a pretty good company. They're nice to have in the community, and they're full of knowledge. Dave's done some quite interesting projects in the past, and I'm just starting to find out some of the stuff that Dave's been into and done. I know he holds a Guinness World Record for something. I forget what it is though off the top of my head, Dave. I'm sorry. But yeah, between Matt and Dave, and even the other guys that work down at Printed Solid, they're really good for the community. Can't say that enough. Alright, so the bed is 45. Did I not tell it to heat up the... Oh, okay. So you have to heat the hot end and the bed separately through the prepare menu. I'm used to the version of Marlin that I'm running on my TiVo, where I have an option for preheat PLA, I have an option for preheat nozzle for PLA temperatures, the preset temps, and preheat PLA bed. So I can turn on one or the other, or I have the option for both. I hit what would normally be the option for both from what I'm used to. That's not actually what it does. You have preheat PLA heats the nozzle up on the stock firmware. Preheat PLA bed heats the bed up to a rough, decent PLA temperature, which is 45 degrees. The preheat PLA for the nozzle is going up to 185 degrees. This thing's heating up pretty quick. I'm already up to 140 degrees, and I've actually never seen any of my printers ramp up quite that quick. That's what Dave has. He has the world's largest Nintendo Entertainment System controller, and he was a former BattleBot contestant as well. Dave, I know, was just on the Hack 5 channel with Shannon talking about 3D printing. She's doing a 3D printing series on Hack 5, and Dave was just out there last week, I think it was, and was on the Hack 5 show. I haven't even gotten to see those episodes yet. I've been so far behind on my YouTube subscriptions. Keith asked if Dave's carrying spare parts. They are for their customers, but they are not just selling them on the website. So if you buy a CR-10 from them and you need a spare part, they can get you hooked up with it. Okay, so the hot end's up to temp. Let's go ahead and feed this filament in here. This is the reason why that filament sensor is easily removable. You can unhook the one side and kind of hinge it out of the way so that you can feed your filament into the extruder. I'll tell you what, first things first, that slid in through the extruder very easily. Very happy with that. For a Bowden setup, that worked pretty well. And just like that, we've got the green filament that Dave used to test for my benchy. Got that pushed out. Okay. So, now that we're heated up, we've got filament in, let's do the bed leveling. Now, it's called bed auto leveling. I believe that it's a step process. So the head's going to move over. It's going to drop down to the bed. Gotta move this clip back out of the way. So this X-homed. You just saw the bed kind of jerk a little bit. Bed home to the Y position. And now the Z is going to go down. Now the Z does go down slowly. That can be changed, but the auto home currently goes down pretty slow. Oh, really, Dave? I didn't know that. So Hack 5 was shot in your, they filmed that in your garage when you were living in San Francisco. That's pretty cool. That was probably back when I was really watching Hack 5 a lot. Before I started watching more and more of the Maker podcasts, or Maker YouTube channels and stuff. Alright, I'm going to grab a business card quick for bed leveling. Dave, would you recommend any kind of bed adhesion on the glass, or just go ahead and go for a test print straight on the glass once I level it? Alright, so slid the business card. This is a really thin business card. A little bit thicker than a regular piece of paper, but thinner than a standard premium business card. Slid that underneath the nozzle and adjusted the knob until I had just a little bit of friction from it sliding underneath. Now each time you do this, this is kind of goofy, but every time you do this, you got to go back into prepare, go back to bed auto leveling, and tell it to go to the next step. And now it's going to move over here. Do the same thing. Like that one there's pretty free, so I'm going to raise the bed. Okay, do it again, prepare, bed auto level. Next step is probably going to come up to here. And again, that one's really loose too. Okay, so there we go. Do it one more time. I'm guessing one more time. Bed auto level. Next step, I'm guessing it'll go to the middle. Yep. Now, this is where that big bed comes into play. I just leveled the outside corners. In theory, the middle should be pretty close. That's pretty tight there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to each of the corners and just sweep the bed down just a little bit. Still a little bit. Now when I'm saying I do this a little bit, I mean I'm just barely tweaking these. Dave said the glass on the CR-10 is not very sticky. So with that said, I'm going to grab, I'm just going to do a glue stick since that's what most people start out with. I'll do a glue stick. So, typical Elmer's glue, PVA, glue stick, disappearing purple. Disappearing purple is nice because you can put it down, you can see where you got it, and then it dries semi-clear. The only downside to that is if you're finishing a print, you have to wash it, the bottom layer, because you will have some PVA glue stuck to the bottom of the print. Okay, so the middle's adjusted. I'm going to just see what it does. Prepare, bed auto level. Next step. Okay, that must be, it's done. It just lifted up maybe about 3 or 4, maybe 5 millimeters at the most. So, I'm going to rehem. I'm going to take and put glue stick down right about in the middle. I'm just going to do a square in here because I'm going to have to pull this off and clean it. Because I'll end up I'll probably use Magic Goo on this weekend. So I'm going to put that right in the middle. Hopefully I'm in the right spot, and that's where the test print's going to print. Okay, so we need that thumb drive that came with it. Well, it's not a thumb drive, it's a micro SD card reader that has our SD card in it. Take that out. And it goes right here on the side. And it does go in upside down. Push it in until it clicks. Okay, so one thing that the CR-10, at least with its current firmware, does not do is it does not recognize automatically when you put the card in, like some of the 2004 LCD displays do for the RAM sports and stuff. This, I had to hit SD initialize, or INT, and then from there it came up with print from SD card. Now, we have a couple of prints on here. There is... maybe it's not a couple of prints. So there's the Lao Sil U, I don't know. LAOSILUOMU G code. And there's some other stuff on here. I'm not exactly sure what that is yet. So let's hit the G-code file. We're already at 185 degrees for the hot end. The bed temperature, their stock G-code is shooting for 50 degrees. So the bed's going to heat from 45 up to 50. And then it will begin to print. Anybody who's watching have any questions for either me or Dave on this printer? Or in general, questions?
Yeah, what times do you need up? What times do you need up?
Prices. Alright, bed temperature for this print, for the test print is 50 degrees Celsius for the bed and 205 degrees Celsius for the hot end. Which is okay, our average PLA temperature. Typically for PLA you're going to run, some people will run down to like 180. Typically I see people running 195 up to 210, 220 depending on the PLA. If it's like Protopasta's matte fiber, you might see somebody running at 230. The temperatures vary, but you'll get a feel for it with your printer if it's your first printer. So we're homing. So the test print is printing with a raft, but so far bed adhesion looks pretty good. Now again, that's the bed adhesion with a PVA glue stick. I'm going to, while that's printing, try to connect up my cell phone so you guys can see this. Yeah, Dave, I can't believe you stuck with me this whole time. Definitely, go get yourself some sleep. You got a big day ahead of you tomorrow. Good luck with the sound, and I hope you. I know you guys are tired and everything, but I hope you got a busy day tomorrow as well. Sounds like today was a pretty good hit for you. So, thanks for sticking around, giving your pro tips, Dave, answering some questions from everybody in the chat. And again, thank you for sticking with me through the build of the CR-10 and testing it out.
Yeah, should we come see you tomorrow then?
Just so you guys see, I mean, that's kind of the support from Prince Solid. I mean, they've been need to stick around here. They've been at it all day long, and yet he hung around here with us for 3 hours. Um, I appreciate it. That's the kind of service you can get from Printed Solid. Thanks, Master Hops. I'm glad you joined as a subscriber. If you haven't already, go follow Joe Mike Terranella on YouTube. He's actually doing a contest right now. A few of the YouTubers in the 3D printing community now are doing contests, and the entry fee for the contest is to go and subscribe to, typically it's 5 YouTube channels. Joe Mike was kind enough, I believe it was a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, to recommend my channel as one of his required entries into his gleam contest for his 6,000 subscriber giveaway. So if you haven't, go check out Joe Mike after the stream and watch his contest video and get yourself entered to win some filaments, and I believe he's even giving away a printer or so. But I'm glad you could hang out with us tonight. This is the first time I've done a live stream sort of solo this long. First time doing a live build or anything like that. Usually I'm too anxious and just rip everything out of the box and then go, I should have recorded that. So you like that print plate Eddie Moser? I haven't tried that out yet. I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about it. I've been happy with glass ever since I started printing on glass, and a lot of times I can print directly on glass, but with no sort of bed adhesion assistance. But if I have problems with something sticking to a piece of glass, then glue stick or since Maker Faire, I've been using Magic Glue. That seems to be doing pretty well too, although I still haven't come to a full conclusion on whether I like Magic Glue better or just a PVA glue stick. The CR-10 here, I don't know if you were on when I started the print, the first test print, but the CR-10 is printing using just glue stick straight on the stock glass bed. They do give you with the printer big sheet of, actually looks like 2, probably because you need 2 to cover the whole bed. 2 big sheets of the yellow masking tape. Never actually tried printing on the yellow masking tape, but they send that along. So if you don't have anything out of the box, at least you got something. And then they also send a small roll of the yellow masking tape as well. When I first got into 3D printing, I printed on the blue painter's tape like everybody recommended. But since then, I've switched to just straight glass with glue stick. So far, we're looking pretty good. There is a glob that started while I was doing the bed leveling and everything, and getting the initial print started. There is a glob that's in the middle of the print. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a fault of the CR-10. It's my fault for leaving it heated up for as long as I did. I'm not sure what's up with the whole mic situation tonight. I apologize for you guys that might have been on at the very beginning of the stream. It did start out very well as far as audio went. Yeah, I'm kind of interested to try PEI. They're selling that down at Printed Solid, big enough to fit the CR-10, and it's a fair price for it. So I may give that a try at some point. I also, I'd like to try the BuildTak FlexPlate system, primarily because of the fact that that kind of opens me up to being able to buy some spring steel and make my own bed materials as well. but I'd like to try the BuildTech Flex Plate. This may be a good candidate for that. We'll see. But yeah, the smoothness of like PEI and glass, you can't beat it. Unfortunately, the camera on my phone won't connect. Or I'd show you guys a little bit of a close-up of the print. Yeah, Eddie, if I do, I'm going to probably get in contact with Kayla over at BuildTech in the next couple of weeks about maybe trying out the flex plate system. See if they can work out a deal for me as far as the price goes. I definitely, if I do that, I'll be doing a video on the channel about it, and then most likely a follow-up video as I start to experiment a little bit more with doing my own custom build plates then. There's a couple of different materials I'd like to try to print on. Hey Keith, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking around for most of the stream. And I'm going to send you a DM on Twitter about that motherboard for the Wanhao Di3. I don't know if you guys can see it in the camera or not. There is some wobble. That's not the printer. That's the table that I have it on, the little poker table. Or, no, it's not even a poker table. So far, though, I mean, that's looking pretty good. I did hear that this print is like a 45-minute print. I may not let it go 100% of the way through for the stream. What I will do is, after the stream's over, I'll post pictures to Twitter, Facebook, all those, and post a link down in the description to photos of some of the initial prints that I did off of this. Tonight, I'm probably going to end up wrapping up the stream here very shortly because my wife and I have a craft show tomorrow. That this printer, I'm going to do probably the worst thing you can do to a brand new printer. I'm going to pick it up and move it in less than 24 hours after setting everything up. Drive down the road about 10-15 minutes, set it all back up for the public to see it at a craft show. So we'll see. I'm definitely going to continue out on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. I'll be in the CR10 group. I've been in a member of the group. I just haven't posted much because, well, this is my first CR10. But I've been in there. I actually got in that group to get one of the STL files that Disney pulled from everywhere else that's still in that group, which I can now finally print big enough instead of a scaled down version of it. So I'll be continuing to do updates and talking more and more about this printer and my opinions of the printer. Yeah, Eddie, I don't know if you've seen it before. I do have a channel on the video, or yeah, a video on the channel from back in August of my 3D printing setup when I go camping and how I run the printers out of the back of my Explorer. When we're doing things like back in the summer, we were doing fidget spinners. Leading up to the fall, I've been doing coming into summer, end of summer, beginning of fall. I've been doing a lot of the 3D printed Mickey Mouse ears for sale on our Etsy shop, which, again, if you guys want to support the channel, there is a link to the Etsy shop down below. The Black Friday sale we were doing for 20% off is over, but there is a 10% off for Small Business Saturday. But I've been taking the printers along camping with us so that I can run batches of prints and build up stock. So, yeah, definitely check that out. I'm sure the way this, as solid as this was when I put it together, I have no real concerns about moving it tomorrow. Re-level the bed when I get there, and I should be off and printing. You drove yours 12 hours away for the holidays. Wow. Started right where you left off. That's cool.
You're not out here for me.
What all have you done to your CR-10, Eddie? Yep, thanks again, Raster Ops. I'm not sure if you're heading out, but definitely thanks again for joining me for the stream. There's going to be more to come. The channel, I want to keep the focus of the channel kind of broad so that it's 3D printing, woodworking, metalworking, and just general DIY. I'm sure after Saturday, I'm going to probably put the CR-10 to the test and print a full-size Star Wars helmet all in one go on this thing. Rather than starting off small, I'm going to go big. Do one big print on it after the craft show. But for now, I just need the build volume. I keep telling my wife I need to build a printer that has like a 800 by 800 build plate and 50 millimeter build height for the stuff that we do for our NC shop, just so I can batch out a bunch of it. But yeah, this thing's going to get pushed to its limit. Well, not quite to its limit, but I'm definitely going to put it to the test after this weekend. So you did the E3D upgrade. I know Matt and Dave were talking about that down at Printed Solid. Might be something down the road that I do. We'll see. I've got the other printers that can have all metal hot ends on them. Some that I can kind of beat around a little bit, like the TiVo. So I don't know if I'm really going to modify the hot end on this, at least for a while. You did do a BL Touch. Marlin firmware, this is going to get that. Very well possibly tomorrow. So we'll see. Dave has... Dave's got the 1.16 version of Marlin for the CR-10S. So I'll probably end up putting that on here. Just because of the mesh bed leveling. I so far have not been a fan of alder bed level or alder bed calibration, but we'll see. I'll probably try it out. Worst case, I can put it on here, and if I don't like it, I just don't use it. But he did mention that that's sort of a must for the build size of this thing if you want to print something the full size of the bed. I'm going to... I don't think I'm subscribed to your channel, Eddie. I pulled that up in another tab, so after the stream, I'm going to go check out your channel then. Oh, not public yet. Do you have any other videos on your channel? Oh, cool. Well, I'll tell you what, from this perspective so far, I'm not exactly sure what this is printing, because it's not the Kappa Cap. It's something different. It's almost... I'm wondering if it's printing chest palm pieces or something. It's two circles printed on a raft. One just started support material. The other one is still pretty much 100%. And I'm only at 4%. We're 18 minutes in on this thing, so. Oh, okay. You know what? I've seen you in the chats before, Eddie. I don't think I've gotten to interact with you too much, but I think I have seen you in some of the other streams. Probably Chris's streams are one of them. A lot of times with the streams, I'm on them, but I'm also doing something else, and I have it on the side, so it's sort of, to an extent, it's my background noise, and every now and then I look up and see what's going on in the chat, join in for a little bit. Alright, well, I can definitely say bed adhesion with the glue stick on here, the manual bed, what they call auto bed leveling, which is just a 5-point manual bed leveling, all seems to have done the trick. The assembly went really well on this printer. The print that it's doing right now, while I have no idea what it's actually printing, it looks good. There's no warping. It did print it on a raft, which may say something to an extent about the bed level, the flatness of the bed, but it looks good so far. I did notice when I leveled the bed, I leveled the 4 corners, and the center felt like it may have been a little bit higher than the edges, because I did end up having to tweak all of the corners back down just a hair in order to get what I was comfortable with, using a thin, cheap business card to check the gap. But it looks good. The print's looking really good. I will post pictures of the final print later on, probably tomorrow, because I'm probably going to end up stopping this and going on to printing some stuff for the craft show for tomorrow yet, just to get an idea where things are at for that, and get a little bit more stock yet for the craft show. But I'm definitely going to have the printer set up at the craft show, probably take some pictures of the setup. I'll have this one and my Power Spec Ultra, which is a FlashForge Dreamer clone. So I'm going to wrap up the stream for the night. Thanks everybody for joining. If you are interested in getting the CR-10S, or as I call this one specifically, the CR-10SPS, because it's the printed solid edition, definitely check out the description down below. It is a non-affiliate link, so I will not make a cent off of your order with printed solid. There's a link for the CR-10S, which is their certified out the door from printed solid. They assemble it, they test it, and they send a certificate or an inspection list with your printer, with every single CR10 that goes out the door from them, signed and dated, and everything checked off that they did to the printer when they got it. If you're interested in a CR10, but the horror stories that sometimes you hear on the 3D printing groups and on Twitter about the CR10 have you hesitant to buying one, I can honestly say today, after assembling this and picking it up from printed solid, I have no issue paying a little bit more to printed solid to certify the device for me and make sure there's no problems. And if I do encounter a problem that I didn't come in or find tonight during the stream, printed solid will help as customer support for the printer, and they will help with any warranty concerns on the printer. If you buy it from GearBest, if you buy it from any of the Chinese distributors, you don't get that kind of support. You get what you get, and you may play or may fight your whole way through trying to get a warranty repair, warranty part, or warranty exchange, if any at all. So definitely, I would highly recommend you consider looking at printed solid. Again, I am not affiliated with printed solid. Links down below are non-affiliate links. There is, if you would like to support the channel, there is a link for my referral for MakerBox, the monthly filament subscription, where you get approximately 50-gram samples, 4 of them per month, or if you're international, they have a bi-monthly to save on shipping, where you'll actually get 8 sample filaments that are, again, roughly about 50 grams. You'll get 8 of them every 2 months instead of every month, getting 4. And it's actually kind of neat. I've gotten a lot of filaments from them that some I couldn't even afford the sample that I got, because some of those filaments are just that expensive for a 500 kilogram spool or a 1 kilogram spool, if it even comes in a spool that big. This month's box just showed up today. They actually shipped it out early this month. Normally it would come the last few days of the month, but they shipped it out early in attempts to get it out before all the Black Friday rush and everything. If you are interested or thinking about a MakerBox, if you use my referral code down below, I don't get a percentage of it. What happens is, for every 3 people who use my link, I get my month's box for free. So if you would like to support the channel, that's one way you can do it and still get something for your money. It doesn't cost you any extra to use that link, and if you do, I'd appreciate it. There is a link down below for my Patreon. I don't keep Patreon up to date. The last post on there was how I was pulling out of Patreon. However, a few people asked that I keep the account open so that they can make a donation through Patreon instead. I used to have a $1 and a $5 tier. It's now, there are no tiers. You can just make a donation as you please. So if you want to do that, if you like Patreon, you can do it that way. If you want to support me in a way for something that I make, my wife and I have an Etsy shop. It's Flinchball Designs on Etsy. There's also a link down below for that. We do 3D printed, interchangeable, and non-interchangeable Mickey Mouse ears. We can also do custom designed ears as well. We do hair bows, and bow ties, both custom, and right now we just have the cheerleader one and a Baltimore Ravens football bow on our Etsy shop, but there is an order for custom ones. Back in September, I did a custom print. Not sure what it just did. I did a custom print back in September for Pooch over at Repcord 3D. He's a filament manufacturer, a filament seller, and he sells some cleaning kits and different 3D printing parts on Amazon. He requested a bow tie for Maker Faire New York. I did that up for him and actually used all his filaments for the print, for the bow tie. So if you do want to support the channel and get something made by the channel, consider the Etsy account, or the Etsy shop. So with all that said, thanks again everybody who joined in tonight. Thanks Dave for sitting through, after a long day of packing Black Friday orders and shipping them out, sitting through till a little after 2 o'clock in the morning with me during the stream, answering any questions I had, answering questions anybody else had, and correcting anything that I might have gotten wrong. I totally appreciate you spending the time, and again, for everybody else, that's just a show of what kind of support you have with Printed Solid if you purchase from them. So, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel and want to see more of what I'm up to, hit the subscribe button. And if you're already subscribed and you want to be notified of live streams or new video uploads, go ahead and hit the bell next to the subscribe button. So, I'm Matt. This is the build, I'll call it a re-unboxing and assembly and first print on the CR-10S provided by Printed Solid at my cost. And you're watching the How I Do It channel.